Men, why do you often say you're fine even when you're not? Story 1. Honestly, no one really listens. You get about 5 words in and people decide where they think you're going with this. Then they talk about that thing instead of what you're talking about no matter what you say. It's usually easier for me to work through and process things myself than put the effort into fighting to be understood. Story 2. My entire life as a man, I've been taught 2 things. I need to be coming up with solutions to problems. And if I'm not useful, I'm useless. The moment I ask for help or show that I need help with a problem, rather than being the one helping with a problem, I am then regarded as the problem. When I am the problem, I'm not useful. See above. Doesn't take a genius to see that vicious cycle unfold into some serious mental issues. Story 3. Because if I tell you I'm not fine, it inexplicably somehow turns into me trying to comfort and reassure you. No, it's not because of you. No, I'm not mad that you thought this was all about you. Well, you shouldn't feel guilty. I'm sorry you're upset now. Of course I still love you. I'm sorry for upsetting you, honey. No, I promise I'm fine. Everything is perfect. In grad school for the health field, a close family member had a serious health condition, and I thought they were going to die, so I tried working remote. This was years before COVID, but it was fine. Yes, my work quality suffered, but was still generally good. It amounted to an extra round or 2 of edits on papers. I thought we were good since they stressed balance and mental health since we are in the health field. Well, someone didn't like it and wanted me in the office. The chair rolled their eyes at me and said, "If you can't handle your personal problems, I don't think a career in research is for you. Do you even want to be here?" What is especially infuriating about my grad school experience is that a student had free reign to take a few weeks off after her cat died. I have more stories like the above. Damn near every man I know has, and it sucks. Having people not give a would be an improvement. Story 8. Most men, at least in my experience, are taught it's expected you're the one to support, not to expect it. Although movements for men's mental health and opening up are in action, it's also an experience often shared that you open up and things get twisted, used against you, or you're thought of or treated as less of a man. I just think it's a bit of a Wild West on to be more open as a male, which seems shared in the comments here. So for vast majority of guys, it's just safer to continue on keeping it to yourself rather than change it and get hit for it. Story 9. It's not just men. All sorts of people of all ages say they're fine. For many people, "how are you" is used as saying hello. The expected response is something like "okay and you" or "fine." When used like that, nobody expects a real answer. It's just greeting and nothing more. As for myself, it doesn't do me any good talking about how I am. Talking about my depression and PTSD can very easily make me worse, especially if people want details. There's this idea that it's good to talk. That isn't true for everyone in every situation. A psychiatrist told me that while there is a PTSD group course I could go on, due to the nature of my depression and PTSD, the course would very likely make it much worse. Sometimes dredging stuff up causes more harm than good, if it does any good at all, that is. I've also experienced prejudice when people found out that I suffer with depression and PTSD. Last but not least, how I am is none of other people's business. I keep it strictly on a need-to-know business. Apart from doctors, only my immediate family and a couple of trusted friends know. Story 10-1. We can't fix it, you can't fix it, I can't fix it. Whatever it is, we don't have the means, knowledge, experience, or connections to fix the problem. 2. We don't want to cause ripples. By saying we are not fine, it opens the door to us venting potentially unwanted insight into our mental state. Insight that could harm your perception of us, kill the mood or vibe about us, cause people to view us differently, and isolate us from the few social connections we have. E3. You don't need ammo. Very often, almost comically often, when we do open up about how not fine we are, women will remember it and use it as a metaphorical low blow in an argument. Don't say, "I would never. That's so mean. I can't believe you think I'd do that." Because you do. You always do. So to save us all the trouble and keep things par for the course, we are fine. Story 11. Is this a serious question? Seriously? The answer is extremely obvious. We are simply old enough to know no one but our boys and our parents sometimes actually give a. Not our GFs, wives, kids, no one. Young men just coming into the world are learning the hard way and having a hard time coping with it. Us older folks just accept it and say, "I'm fine." The alternative is having people pretend to care and then take whatever is bothering us personally, like it was an attack on them. It's not worth having to explain and argue about. Story 12. Being British, it's because I know you're not really interested in our being polite. I only have conversations about my inner life with my husband and family because we're all engaged in a mutual support system which a stranger or acquaintance won't have an investment in. Story 13. 2 things. First, women and men talk about their problems for different reasons, and it's terrible how the two don't translate. Women just want the men to listen. Men are generally solution-oriented, and that's what they're looking for. Both are fine, they just don't translate. Second, women don't actually want to hear men be vulnerable for the most part. Not all women, but for the most part, showing weakness is unattractive to women. And we know that. For the most part, men are only going to talk to their mother, if that. This is also a bed that men have made, though, so to a large degree, we've got to lay in it. Story 14. Because quite frankly, society has done an excellent job with invalidating men's feelings. If a man wants to talk about how he's feeling, he's told to man up or stop being a pussy. Or the few times I have mentioned how I'm feeling, it seems the other person is zoned out and not actually listening. I've grown used to not even bothering people. They'll get the standard living the dream. Story 15. Because society doesn't care, to be honest. We are taught to handle our own issues or suffer through them, or else we are weak. Weak to society, to romantic interests, weak as a person. So everything is fine. When I say it to people, it's because I know I'll figure out and make things fine, even if they aren't. Men have very few emotional resources, and even among those, most are fragile for one reason or another. It's best to just be fine until you break. Edit. For what it's worth, I tell other people everything will be fine too when they're hurting, because I believe in them. Believe they're strong, smart, or that the problems are temporary and will fade even if they hurt now. Story 16. Because no one cares at all about how we feel. Some will still listen, but most not even that. Even if they listen, they are not able to offer help. I have a severe depression caused by my ex cheating on me. So what? I already know I'm not the culprit. I already know there are more girls out there. I know I shouldn't think about her. I know all the theory, but it still hurts, and nothing you say will make it stop. So why expose myself and my vulnerabilities to some if it won't do any good to me? That's the last reason. People don't take the mental health of men seriously. So if you have an issue, you'll be seen as someone weak. As simple as that. People will look at you with superiority, especially women and older men. Sometimes they'll even use it to attack us. In my personal experience, nearly all the times I've said I'm not fine, it has turned into an experience. So I just hide it now and call it a day. Story 17. While a lot of the comments here are brutal, and in some cases my concern is warranted, often some things I think about are, it's the end of the day, I'm exhausted and just want to get to sleep. I'm not ready for a lengthy discussion. I'm still figuring out how to concisely express what's bothering me. When it involves an issue with someone else, wording is absolutely critical, so I may need more time to be able to accurately express my feelings. I think my second point has some overlap with other sentiment of what I say can be used against me. Annoyingly, when having a conversation and when you try and express I am not fine, but I'm not ready to discuss it right now, that leads to conversations where the other person is trying to drag it out of me, which isn't particularly helpful either, but is a completely fair reaction. Story 18. I'm fine because I don't want to talk about it because it would take more energy to talk than to relax and process the emotion. If I have any trouble processing the emotion alone, I'll let you know, and we'll gladly talk about it. If you don't do this, I might recommend giving it a shot. It really helps you learn to cope with a lot of issues that turn out to be a lot of your own issues handling stressful situations. Story 19. It seems most men in here feel the same way. They feel that no one actually cares to listen. As a curious outsider, a woman, do you men care about each other? If you think a fellow male friend, family member, or coworker is having a hard time, do you care? Do you feel a pang of empathy and a desire to listen or be there for your male friends? Genuinely asking. If most men don't share their feelings because no one cares or wants to hear it, I am curious about the inverse. Does anyone in this thread feel empathy for other men and a desire to listen to them? If so, I wonder if everyone here is mostly being affected by toxic femininity in their lives and would actually benefit from talking to their male friends about their emotions instead of talking to women in their lives. Again, genuinely asking. Story 20. I don't necessarily agree with the comments here. When I say I'm fine, either I'm not in the mood, or this isn't the place for that, or I can handle it on my own. Sometimes I'm just quiet and staring at a wall. If my friends ask me how I'm doing genuinely, I know I can tell them. Story 21. Because if we say we're not, it's easy for some to treat us as Eeyores and not human beings with complicated inner lives. Millions of us were raised to grow up and toughen up, be a man, don't complain, stop crying, quit whining. And that pretty much just got us to the point where expressing ourselves was more or less discouraged, if not frowned upon. Story 22. Almost always, because if you say anything other than fine or good, it doesn't usually result in a positive conversation. Most people don't want to be emotionally dumped on, and society tends to expect us to keep our chin up. I still haven't figured out how to properly deal with my negative emotions, and it's killing me, frankly. Yes, I'm going to therapy. The American medical system treats symptoms, not causes, So I'm stuck with talking to someone who is just punching the clock and letting me go on about myself. I doubt they really care, and I don't blame them. They're doing their job. I'm not terribly interested in taking psychotropic drugs and further empowering big pharma. Are there plenty of ways for me to improve myself and self-treat? Certainly. It's my fault for not having the willpower to conquer my fears and quit nicotine soda and cut back on screen time, among other things. Really, I'm just extremely lonely. I was a NICU baby, and despite having a childhood that on paper was quite good, I have become aware of just how dysfunctional my brain is, and it makes every little thing into a struggle when it doesn't have to be. My emotions gyrate wildly. I'm extremely self-involved and have a hard time paying attention to anything that I'm not extremely interested in. I hope I can get out of my own head someday. Some days it's very nice in here. Other days, not so much. I'm fine. Story 23. I just went through a difficult period where my heart hurt and I reacted poorly and relapsed. Almost no one wanted to help. I could slowly feel myself losing connections and being shunned. Nobody likes you when you're down and out. This latest episode was a harsh reminder of that. My only option is to take care of myself and ensure that I'm on my A game at all times, or I'll be left behind. I was never one to espouse that line of thinking, but this latest period was all the evidence I needed. Get yourself out of the gutter because no one else will. Story 24. For me personally, I don't want to talk about it. I want something to be done about it. I can't fix it. If I could, I would have done it. But instead of using my energy to work on other things, or spending my energy to try and find comfort or joy, I instead find myself in an unpleasant, exceedingly dull, substandard, insipid conversation about how much I suck. But I don't usually say I'm fine even then. I don't like lying, and it is often lying. When I do, it's a conscious decision that the person I am talking to is not close enough as an acquaintance that I can trust them. Story 25. Speaking from personal experience, most people who ask this question are not really interested in an explanation. The unfortunate reality is that there simply isn't a lot of sympathy in the world for men dealing with emotional issues. Staying silent is often the easiest way to get through it without being judged as soft. Story 26. Because people don't care if you're a man with problems, they just don't. Only certain things get a pass from what I've seen. But barring those, opening your problems to others just gives others ammunition to use against you. Humans are odd in the sense that for whatever reason we follow a hierarchy. Both men and women do. However, men's hierarchy is based a lot differently on things like dominance, pride, ego, and having a chink in any one of these proverbial armors, and people lower your value in the hierarchy. That's why talking about your problems as a man is not advisable due to society confusing that with a chink in the armor that is considered masculinity, which comprises the things that men are judged on, with the examples of my earlier armor example. Story 27. I don't experience this the way other men do. I'm pretty transparent about what I'm experiencing. I don't expect people to solve my problems, but expressing it is a helpful part of my process. If they ask and don't care, then I don't feel responsible for their apathy. I'm going to answer anyways. If they don't like it, then they can stop asking me and go away. Doing this long enough helps me draw in and develop close relationships with who actually do care, because the ones that don't leave me alone. Story 28. I found that the last thing any woman wants to hear, even family members, is a man venting his emotions. So most men know to keep silent lest they be considered weak, angry, or God forbid emotional. It's unattractive, and it soon becomes a slippery slope whereby people's reactions make you feel even worse. The only outlet for this for most men is their closest male friends, like a dad or a brother who hold some sensitivity for them and can be relied on to soothe matters with humor and empathy. Story 29. As a man, there is an expectation in life that we will be the provider of the household, be strong, stoic in the face of adversity, and stand up when things go wrong. That comes with a level of pressure that we put upon ourselves to remain resolute and just push on when things go wrong. What good will talking do if I'm worried about being homeless or jobless? No one is coming to rescue you as a man. Heck, even if you're living on the street, you're not seen as a priority for housing. If you can't work, you're expected to just find employment. Men have a level of pressure on their shoulders that makes talking frankly pointless. We just have to get on with it and say we are fine, even if we really aren't. Story 30. Because nobody cares if a man is fine or not as long as he can still provide. If something is wrong with us, the world doesn't stop. We have to keep doing what we're doing. A man can't be moved unconditionally. Women, children, and dogs can be loved unconditionally. A man is loved only under the condition he provides something. Chris Rock. Story 31. There's some variation, but almost universally, people have a desire to be understood. Guarantee every man was honest many times and then learned from experience that no one gives a, and that sharing is very often a negative experience for everyone involved. People then pressure men to open up with theoretically good intentions, but it's honestly a bit insulting when people act like they know better than men's lived experiences. Everyone probably thinks they are different and actually care because we like to think of ourselves as good people, and good people care. And you might even care about the man, but guarantee 999 out of 1,000 of you don't give a single about his problems. It's not entirely gendered. Everyone experiences that dynamic a bit, but I don't think most women can really comprehend just how much people do not give a about men. Story 32. Wow, I'm only ever hearing that they want a solution to said thing. This is so far from the truth. Now, there's a lot of times this is true, I'd say about 30 to 40%, but the rest is they need to be able to be vulnerable and comforted, but they probably don't realize that, as they most likely have never had it. Most men in Western society are raised with this idea that they can't show weakness ever, not even to the one they love most. Unfortunately, this idea has been reinforced by women who either lose respect, emasculated the man for being weak coward beta ECT, turned off and disgusted, or use this moment of vulnerability as a weapon against them, typically in a few ways. 1. What you're saying is hurting my feelings, and said partner gets emotional and makes it about them. 2. Will call it back up later to humiliate the man. 3. To call the man weaker than he really is. 4. You're not who I thought you were, I'm done, I'm out, ECT. But they don't want sympathy or pity. That's not what they really need. All they need, what is really desired more often than not, is to know they don't always have to be strong all the time, that they can rely on you to be there for them, to be soft and gentle and caring. Men are pillars of strength. We can hold up the whole world for long periods of time and take an insane amount of external abuse and stress from the world. But there's times when we need a break to allow ourselves to truly let our guard down, to relax and let everything out, to know that you will have our back, even if we are only human. Now, if you noticed, I said external abuse. We have very thick armor around our hearts, and we need it to survive in our modern world. But to the very few we take that armor off for and let inside, that's the most vulnerable and frightening place a man can allow someone to be. And unfortunately, they are normally betrayed, time and again, over and over, relentlessly for years. Story 33. As a man, saying what is wrong is similar to saying the quiet parts out loud. I went through clinical depression. When I was on the precipice of the spiral, I opened up to my GF. She left me a week later, citing that she needed me to be the strong one in the relationship. Then I opened up to friends who suddenly had no time for me. Then I opened up to family who did much the same. I went through that crucible alone. Story 34. Because I feel nobody cares. I don't want to drag others' moods down with my problems. Also, if I'm dating someone and I feel comfortable enough to tell them about my problems, usually I don't, because I don't want to be a mood killer. Additionally, I've told past girlfriends about my problems, and they usually end up ghosting me or ending things soon after. Therefore, even when I'm not doing well mentally, nobody will know because I put on a facade. Unfortunately, this is life. Story 35. Any partners have asked me to open up more, and through years of therapy and work and just getting older, I have. But I had one partner that wanted me to open up, and when I did, she said she started getting the ick hearing about my problems and thought I was less of a man. Telling that to my brothers and guy friends, turns out it's not uncommon. I do think there are partners out there that want what they think is vulnerability, but when presented with actual vulnerability, are turned off by what it looks like. I think their idea of what that looks like is crying over babies, puppies, but handling everything else internally and not bringing it up. I don't think I should be a fine line, but sometimes it is. That's not opening up. Story 36. Because men are often mocked or demeaned if they show any weakness, by women and by other men. We learn not to show any vulnerability. The weakest get attacked. Bullies starting in the very youngest grades will always go after the ones that are viewed as the weakest, the crybaby, etc. It's a learned behavior that takes years of training to develop. Story 37. When I've opened up to anyone about my true feelings, one of four things happen. It's weaponized against me later on. I'm told that what I'm feeling about something is not a valid emotion to have, so I should stop feeling that way. I end up comforting the other person because expressing my emotions hurt them, and now it's my fault that they feel bad, so I'm the one that is actually in the wrong. The times I've let myself cry in front of another person, I've been treated differently by them from that moment on, which has even included being excised from their lives. So it's easier for me to just swallow my emotions and deal with them internally. If I'm not going to be heard, why say anything? If I keep it in, at least no one is dismissing me. Hiding my emotions ensures I don't lose the people in my life that I care about. Story 38. I'm rarely not fine, TBH, but now I'm slightly paranoid. That means there's something actually wrong with me. As in consideration of that saying, to the effect of it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a sick society. Then again, that rationale could simply serve as an excuse for someone to not work on themselves. Life is like that sometimes. We can be right for being wrong and be wrong for being right. Story 39. As a man, sadly, very little can be solved with words. Doesn't matter what we say. We can be dead on with our words, but it doesn't matter at all. Also, at some point, a man has to realize, like if I say I'm not fine, what is anybody supposed to do about it? Best case scenario, I'll find someone who will listen for a second. That's about it. A man's problems will still be there when he's done talking about them. 9 times out of 10, we have to do something about whatever the problem is. And if we don't, the problems will just pile up. Also, it wastes energy explaining our problems. That's energy that could be used to fix the problem. Story 40. Because you probably wouldn't really give a tss and wouldn't expect to hear me bitching about my hemorrhoids, headache, diarrhea, aching back, screwed up knee. So why the hell should I say anything that would start a conversation I'd just as soon leave well enough alone? 99.9% of those asking that question only want to hear fine. The rest are just going to tell me I already know or frankly don't want to hear their own ed up on top of dealing quietly with my own. Story 41. You know why. Or you're like 12. Nobody cares, listens, and the rare time they do, it's turned into something it's not or held against us later. Opening up isn't worth it for most men. Whatever it is will either work itself out or will adapt and it won't show anymore. Bringing you into it is just asking for trouble or misunderstanding. It doesn't take too many times of being vulnerable and hurt because of it before we stop being vulnerable at all. People don't care about men. Women don't, men don't. We're alone and absolutely nobody cares. You'll say you do, but just look at the comments. You're going to see thousands of men say the same exact thing. That much anecdotal evidence sure starts to look like a rule, not an exception. Story 42. What good will it do to bring someone else into it? If you ask me if I'm okay, you probably saw something that made you ask. That's an immediate indication for me to wake up and crack a joke and remember not to let my guard down like that. Seriously, I don't understand why I would ever want to spill negativity onto someone else. What, so now 2 people can feel? Is that better? No, I'm fine. Ha! You're seeing things. Better get your eyes checked. Story 43. How many men feel the need to say fine even when they are not is something interesting. Beneath the surface is probably the origin of societal standards or the fear of being vulnerable. However, expressing true feelings could actually bring about one of the strongest additions, namely, the people who will support us. Sometimes all we're going through is, in fact, nothing but a need to be honest with each other. This is when probably the world will change. Story 44. Agree with so many answers in here. Totally empathize with the "it will be used against me and there is no solution" crowd the most. I would say, though, that the first reason that came to my mind was I am trying not to think about it. I don't want to unpack this situation. Talking about it will turn into a negative thought spiral, and this serves no purpose. In reality, we can't change the past, and we don't know the future. Just ruminating about something will make you miserable. I am trying to move on. Most of the time I'm saying I am fine. Story 45. For me, I almost never say that I'm doing fine. I make an effort to be extremely honest and very open with how things are going when asked. Almost everyone stops asking. They don't want to hear about it. They don't care. At best, they want to talk about themselves. The problem solves itself. They learn not to ask, and I don't have to further discuss things with them that they don't care about. Now, rarely someone actually does have an interest and cares, and we have a conversation, and it's nice. Story 46, Lowell. I won't speak for everyone else, but for me, I say I'm fine when I'm not if one. I know it'll get weaponized against me at some point in the future, too. I know I won't get anything but performative support from the person I'm telling I'm fine. 3, I just don't want to rehash all of my stress to essentially provide an update that, yes, things are still rough. Conversely, I have 0 issues talking about my problems with my wife, who I trust completely. My family? Hell no. To my family, I'm always fine. Story 47. Because early on in most men's childhoods, it becomes blatantly apparent that nobody cares if you're fine or not. Asking a man whether they are okay is now just a part of social etiquette. Polite small talk. We learn very early on that saying we are not fine is not met with compassion but judgment and ridicule. People think less of us as men when we say we are not okay or that we are feeling blue or that something bad happened. Even if our plight is met with genuine empathy, we fear it is all for show. We fear silent judgment and gossip. Even when total disaster strikes, such that it is obvious that no sane human being would ever be okay, we will either say we are fine, ignore the question, get angry at the question because we know we cannot say we are not okay and are being asked anyway, or make light of the situation as a show of bravado. So how am I? I'm doing fine. Story 48. Because except for trusted friends, a lot of people will try to respond in a way that makes themselves feel better about themselves, either by offering a non-solution saying it's not that bad, or in rare cases even challenging why I feel that way or why I'm not tackling the problem if it bothers me that much. I don't have the energy to explain again and again that I primarily want honest compassion and will ask for advice when I'm ready. It's so much easier to just say, oh yeah, I'm doing fine. Story 49. It usually isn't worth the hassle to try and explain what's wrong. I have multiple mood disorders and am neurodivergent on multiple dimensions, so my mind is a mess in a way that I can't seem to communicate very effectively. And even then, I doubt people would even want to sit down and listen at length to the problems I face with my mind. I also struggle to understand who to trust with all this. I know there are trustworthy people out there who love me and want to help, but identifying them is really hard to do. Story 50. Because it's a lot easier to end the conversation than to fall into the rabbit hole of being belittled, berated, victim-blamed, and virtue-signaled, not to mention have your masculinity questioned, your uality assumed, and your upbringing, morality, and mental capacity attacked just because you expressed your genuine feelings, trauma, problems, and setbacks to somebody. So better to say, I'm fine, and move on, than tell those who will do one or all of the above, or go on to spread all kinds of theories and gossip about you when you already have enough on your plate. Story 51, because experience shows that opening up means you'll get hurt. Previously, opening up has meant they've used what I've said against me or just not actually cared about what I've said. More commonly, they've got upset or got mad at what I've said, to which I end up needing to console and apologize. So ultimately, what's the point? Men want an easy life, and if keeping it insides mean we stay safe and life carries on, we'll do that. Story 52. Social conditioning. Boys are often told or bullied if they are not fine. Showing emotional vulnerability is something that's commonly exploited by other boys and girls in sibling relationships and school, etc. Parents often tell boys to not show emotions, boys don't cry, etc. Society has developed masculinity to be a thing that includes things like being a provider, being strong, protecting loved ones, etc. All of those can be fine, but they also put a pressure to outwardly not show vulnerability. Story 53. Because no one cares. If you do reach out, then it's often used against you down the line. Better off sticking to the silent scream or crying in the shower where no one will hear you. Life is tough, so we just have to be tougher. Sad fact, but humans are predominantly mean and nasty. Be kind to other people should be our default, but it sadly isn't. Story 54. Because I know I will not be taken seriously, not even by my family. As a teenager, I recall telling my father I had a case of constipation. I knew it was because I had a hard time going to the bathroom. That man did not listen to me, and he did not believe me. I was legitimately scared and did not know what to do. I tried to explain it to him, but he still did not help me. He literally looked at me and said, "You're not constipated." That pissed me off so much because I was literally not fine, and he was not concerned when I told him to his face. Luckily, my mom took me seriously. 2 days and some stool softener and I was fine. From then on, I knew who to go to for my personal problems that I needed help with during my time in that house. So yeah, thank you, Mom, and screw you, Dad. Story 55. Because there are two possible states. Either it's not bad enough to do something about it and it merits no further consideration, or it's bad enough to do something about it, at which point it's the focus of the attention. For women, there's a category in between those for things that are bad enough to complain about, but not bad enough to do something about it, except complain in the hopes that maybe someone else does something. Story 56. The only reason to tell another person your troubles is so that they can help you. If my troubles cannot be fixed through help, or I don't believe that you can or should be the one to help me, then there's no point to discussing them. You know how men always get accused of trying to fix women's problems when all you want is for us to listen. That's because we don't talk about problems just so someone will listen. We are assuming that if you're talking to us about a problem, it's so that we can help fix that problem. Men never talk about their problems just to be heard. Story 57. Because no one cares about our feelings and don't pretend otherwise. Opening up just lets you realize that nobody cares and that you're even more alone than you think. The truth is that society doesn't give a damn about how men feel, and the slightest feeling expressed by a man is automatically labeled as weakness. Story 58. Because no one cares. They will listen to your story, then dismiss it because you're not a woman, a minority, or some other hot topic demographic. They'll suggest you go to therapy, which has done absolutely nothing for me, and our problems are cultural and systematic, so there's likely no solution, even if you did pour your heart out. I envy attractive women. I would sell my car just for a week of being objectified and fawned over by people. Men are so alone they would welcome unwanted attention and harassment just to feel some semblance of validation. Story 59. Here's the real answer. Never in the history of the human race has it ever been beneficial to be vulnerable as a man. I'm not saying men can never be vulnerable or can't ask for help, that's not my point. But when has it benefited them to do it? Have you ever known a man who was vulnerable all the time that you respected or trusted? Women who think they want that will secretly, instinctively think you are weak when you do it. Men will immediately see weakness. Even cats and dogs know this. Cats and dogs hide illnesses so well, they usually don't manifest until it's too late. A dog wolf who shows weakness will oftentimes just be left behind by the pack to die. This is the reality of survival. It's ingrained deep within us. It's built into men as an evolutionary protection mechanism for good reasons. Name 5 historic men who showed massive vulnerability, who improved their standing in society because of it. Story 60. If it is something that can't be fixed, then there's no reason to talk about it. Too many times I've talked about things beyond my control, and sure, I get a moment where I feel better. But then the reality of it comes back, and I feel the same as before, if not worse, because then by feeling better and then being let down, the feeling of being let down is added. It is a struggle of getting to realistic expectations. But if the realistic expectation is no change, I have enough stress, so mitigating it by not talking about it in that moment makes more sense to me. And say it is within my control. Why do I need to talk about it? That means I have to deal with it. And I have a very, very small circle of people I trust to bring things to if I need their help. I'll go to them directly if I need their help. Story 61. If I'm not fine, it's not hot. Any percentage of not fineness makes me a more unattractive partner. In almost all circumstances, being not fine is more likely to lead to the guy getting dumped, shamed, belittled, disregarded, or otherwise lessened, even if it is a subconscious bias. With dating apps and men's health being regarded as a joke, we already feel like balloons on a dartboard. Of course, we're going to hide our emotions. Story 62. People really don't want to hear it. There's a negative stigma for men to open up. If you do, more often than not, people change their opinion of you, and not in a good way. You usually don't get any real support for doing it. It's hard to perceive a possibility of anything good coming of it, so it gets tossed out as high risk, low reward. Anytime I've ever opened up in my life, nothing good has come of it. Story 63. Because the things that aren't fine can't be fixed, and the only way I've been able to make peace with them is to just accept that things will never be fully okay. Whenever I do try to talk about them, I just end up feeling worse. At the end of the day, there's no fixing all of the deep systemic issues that make life harder, and I have too many people counting on me to break down over things that will never change. Story 64. Because nobody actually cares. It's trendy to say you care. It's trendy to encourage your man to be vulnerable. But you know what happens when we do finally choose to take the risk and be vulnerable. A. We find ourselves consoling others. B. We find our friends and partners pulling away. Don't you ever fucking tell me you care. There's not a single soul on this planet that isn't paid by the hour that truly gives a about what a man is going through. This is what life has taught me, and it's not for lack of trying. I've tried being open with those who say they care, and the only thing it brings is more pain and more isolation. Once the veil of invulnerability and tenacity is compromised, no one wants you. Stop kidding yourself, ladies. Once the genie is out of the bottle, we know it's game over for us. Imagine a world where just speaking your heart and soul means potentially sacrificing a relationship you cherish. Story 65. For me, it's because I don't feel like talking about it at the moment. But reading this thread, truthfully, many of you just need to surround yourself with better people. I know you can't choose your family, but you sure as is choose your friends. This is coming from a man who feels like they can talk about their problems with their friends quite easily when I'm ready to. People do care. But if you're saying people don't, or they cut you off, or they change the subject, that's a bad friend, y'all. Story 66. A few months ago, I went out for dinner with a group of friends. I showed up a little late, and they were mostly all there. I was asked, "How are you?" Now I've been pretty depressed lately, and I'm honestly a little tired of pretending that I'm fine, so that's what I said. I'm really depressed right now. Not only did they assume I wasn't actually depressed, but not a single one of them has reached out to see how I'm doing, and I haven't been invited to any group hangouts since. Nobody cares. Society has a script to follow, and anybody that doesn't follow the script is ostracized. Story 67. Because most people don't actually care or want to help. Just like most people don't want honesty, they want to hear what makes them feel good. And it's not just friends or loved ones that make us feel that way. Even doctors who are supposed to help us basically say, "Yup, suck it up. That's life, deal with it." I'm actually in a better spot mentally, now that I've been taking better physical care of myself. But this is a small list of what is going through my brain basically at all times. I have a full page of house projects that need to get done, none of which cost under like $5K because the house is so old. Sole provider for myself, my GF, her 2 kids, both of our dogs. So literally, failure at any point to make enough to float that boat means it all sinks and no one is going to help. GF has major medical issues, which DRRs have basically told us, yup, sucks, but it's not bad enough for us to do anything. So make some life adjustments and see you later. Even though she passes out all the time and has almost died from it more than a few times. Still helping out around the house and with the kids as much as I can aside from cooking because I am crap at that. Making $35 an hour currently, and it's still just enough to get by. I have 0 medical coverage currently, aside from the VA because our work company is too small to provide it internally. We can be reimbursed for coverage from the market, but it only covers till $400-ish a month. Everything else is out of pocket and some of the cheapest, most bare minimum coverage that I couldn't even use because all the DRs in my area that are covered won't take any new clients, does little to nothing. And anyone who has used the VA knows the quality of your care is on par how much you pay. And VA is free for vets, so how good do you think it is? GF is constantly depressed due to her health, BPD, and laundry list of other medical issues that I can do nothing about, causing her to not take care of herself and thus make all of it even worse. I personally have ADHD to battle with, and if I forget my meds even for a day, my temper spirals out of control for no reason just because my brain is broken. Paying all the bills for everything except for food, thankfully she gets benefits for that technically being a single mom. And this is the basic day-to-day stuff, not even counting a bad day. Like today when my GFS car died on the way to dropping the kids off, so now I'll likely have at least a $1K bill to fix everything wrong with that. And this is a small list, and I could talk your ear off for hours. If I actually told you every little thing going on in my brain at any given time, this is just what I could think of while typing just now. Who's going to fix any of this? Who's going to help? I'm a white male in corn-fed Central America. Despite what any trend or bias says, men are the spearhead. We take all the weight, grit our teeth, and smile because no one, not a single person actually cares. And we don't expect them to because every man knows every other guy is dealing with the same. It's unspoken man law. And sure, we have friends, and sure we can vent, but it doesn't change or fix anything. So there's no point.